see for 2023 from a spiritual point of view?
Yeah, probably maybe refreshingly, my perspective is quite different from the folks we've listened to, which are all wonderful and fascinating and so on. But, Bob Dylan's statement, or in his song, "You don't need a weatherman to tell which way the wind blows," is quite telling, because to see our future for this year, we just have to look at the past trajectory. There's no, though we may see some deviance from that, if we look at what's happened in the last few years, it's moving forward quite rapidly. We have 80% of the planet has been vaccinated. So they have, basically we have people who are producing toxic proteins in their body ad infinitum. We don't know to what degree, because there's many different batches and many different situations and different manufacture, and there's no standardization. But we already see in some places, as we know through actuarial tables and so on, a 40% increase in mortality, all-cause mortality, and so on. So we don't know the impact that's going to have overall, but it's unlike anything that's ever happened on this planet. I've been treating people for 45 years as naturopath chiropractor, but this is pretty unprecedented. And when the body is not actually designed to produce toxic proteins ad infinitum in every tissue. So we don't know where that's going to go. And as we do know, the Great Reset, that is proceeding rapidly with the psychopathic global corp beings who want nothing else but to control the entire population of the world. That's moving along. We've got some fireworks going on. And I just came back from 5 different countries in Asia. And for example, in Japan and Thailand, especially Japan, 100% of people are wearing masks, even though the government said you don't need to wear masks anymore. And imagine the generation of children that have grown up without seeing facial. It reminded me of androids or some nice shows on TV. What's that one called? Not Westworld. Yeah, the same creators of Westworld. I forget what it's called. But imagine children that grow up without facial expression, without seeing, they see it at home, of course, but without having that important neurological education going on of facial expression, emotional communication, and so on. So we're obviously in terrible trouble. And I always like to tell patients who ask me anything about it, say, it's funny that within the natural world, within biology, there's no insect, reptile, bird, mammal, primate that over billion years of evolution developed a flap of skin with holes in it to protect them from germs. No mask was developed in nature. In fact, we have this incredible, complex and sophisticated turbinates and Waldeyer's ring, lymphatic tissue, and all kinds of chemical and physical barriers, immune functions, and so on, beautifully designed. So we somehow didn't develop a flap that allows us to rebreathe our own air. And I think it's 75% of all toxins in the body are excreted via our exhalations, not via our skin, kidneys, or colon, but via our exhalation. So rebreathing all that in is pretty phenomenal. I was actually trying to do some research and finding out what is in our in-breath, our out-breath rather, that we're breathing in. But, there's petrochemicals and, of course, viruses and fungi and everything imaginable. Every kind of toxin is supposed to be going out your breath. Anyway, so there we are. We have that trajectory that's going on. And that's, as a doctor, I already see that in my office. That we see the damaging effects of that. We see the chronic conditions that are going on. And it's tough to watch, among those that are the so-called pure bloods, then it's a different situation. But I think for me, the most startling things, I said this for a number of years, that we're heading into if we named our era, I call it the age of charlatanism, the age of the charlatan. What is a charlatan? We see that not just on a spiritual level, but politicians, recording artists, talking heads on television, celebrities, whatever it is. Charlatan means basically that you really don't know what you're talking about, or you're not talking from your core, from your essence, from yourself, but you do believe, or you're making everybody else believe that you know what the heck you're talking about. So we do live in an age of this kind of phenomenal deception. I always say, what stop for a moment and think that there is a $1 trillion profession, $1 trillion industry called the advertising industry that has no reason to exist except to deceive you into purchasing something. Yes, maybe in the old days they made some comparisons between this object and that object, but then with Bernays and his ilk, the nephew of Freud, Edward Bernays, who really invented modern mind control as we see it today, apart from CIA or whoever other. But he taught governments and he taught the industry how to work with our Freudian mind and to control people's outputs and control their inputs. And so this profession and this industry is only involved with manipulating us. So we become so used to lying. I remember reading somewhere how many lies we are told a day, especially if we watch television or watch advertisements, etc. But you can watch any media, and you can look on Facebook, and you're getting people's false information. And so it becomes quite difficult for the average person, impossible, I would even say, to have discriminating wisdom, to be able to discriminate what is true and what is not true. And that is the crucial factor, is can you tell shit from Shinola, I think they say in New York. Can you determine if, and it's very difficult. I don't know how many times I've been duped by people who appear honest or who appear spiritual, etc. And sometimes it can take years, as we know. Well, people know through their marriages, and sometimes it can take 1 or 2 years to find out, that the person that they projected to me and that I accepted because of my lack of insight, they're not that same person who I thought they were. That's the common statement you hear. Yes, because not only because you were not perceptive, but they went to great lengths to express a persona, a mask, rather than demonstrating their essence or making that available. So it's very easy to be fooled. And and this idea also was mentioned about the worship of celebrity and the worship of superficiality. It's quite problematical. The worship of status really makes the world go round. And so does, as you know, Scott, I'm very much involved with what I call the 5-element elemental psychology and elemental healing. In that system, we have something called power, which is your innate essence, to steal a term from Gurdjieff, your inherent capabilities and capacities and goodness, basic goodness, as Trungpa said. And then we have loss, which is a disconnect from that. And then shadow, which is a false power, a way of gaining power by manipulation or by negative means. And so we have a world that is run on loss and shadow. And again, the advertising industry is very, very good at exporting that, of making people feel they are deficient in various ways. And they're going to sell you the shadow answer to that, whether it's purchasing something or believing a particular idea, or following a political creed, joining various cults and so on. So that therefore we see the saddest thing of all this, not just that people have received a toxin within their body, but the phenomenal acceptance of deceptive information on a global scale, and the lack of personal research or investigation or the capability to not conform and to follow one's own distant drummer. So that has been sad. I've always said that 90% of the world is insane, but it's never been so vividly expressed. So that's not a cheering thought. That's not we almost need, and we might have, some kind of divine intervention to stop human beings from careening towards the edge of destruction, which we're witnessing now, ecologically and financially and so on. We're definitely on a critical mass. But of course, on an individual level, that's just the environment, the background from which we experience. It's just like travel. People say, how was that city? How was Japan? How's Thailand? How's Bali? And so on. Well, it's just a backdrop for your own internal processing. Otherwise, you can just read a travel directory and read a book, and you'll find out about the place. So this planet, this world, this realm is a place where we continually test our mettle. In the Buddhist approach, I think the Hindus have the same concept. They talk about 6 different realms, from hell realms, hungry ghost realms, animal realms, human realms, demigods realm, God's realm. It's very interesting that the human realm sits in the middle. So it's either the top of the lower realms or the bottom of the upper realms. So we're kind of in the middle. This is where a dividing of the ways is. We can go up or down, and people do. We can watch people even in their own lives. They go into deeper understanding, deeper compassion, more gentle, more generous, more loving, more understanding, and stronger. Or they go the other way, become progressively weaker, progressively more depressed, anger, more into loss and shadow. So that's really what's going on. I don't, in terms of the future, again, being a Buddhist, I'm very much pickled in that for the last 45 years, and that influences my way of thinking. But I am reminded of sitting with Kalo Rinpoche in Darjeeling, or just outside of Darjeeling, a place called Sonada, where he had his monastery. One of the great meditation masters of old Tibet, of the first generation that left Tibet, and he one of the top fellows. And at that time was already old. And it was during maybe it was the Cuban Missile Crisis, 1980, whatever was going on then. But we thought the world was going to end. There's going to be a nuclear holocaust. And one teary-eyed student said, "What's going to happen if they blow up the world? It's going to come to an end." He says, "Well, don't worry. You'll find another samsara. You'll find another illusory world or phenomenal world realm to live in, and you'll keep working out your karma." So basically, our own journey is we're intimately involved with this world. We have obviously have a karmic connection with everybody on this planet, the same as we have a more close karmic connection with the city that we live in, and karmic connection with the people that we meet, and in finer and finer divisions. But basically, our own journey is going to be solo ultimately. We have to work with ourselves and work with our material, try to help others as much as we can. That's what my life has been devoted to. They call it the two goals in Tibetan Buddhism: self and other. So you're trying to have full realization yourself and continually help others along the way. And there's really nothing else you can do. But to me, this particular globe, this particular world, it don't look good. I don't see the human race really surviving as we've known it, with the deterioration of culture and society that's going on now. It's unprecedented, as we all know. The destruction of all the values that we know as truths, everything from gender to you name it. So this is all self-apparent to us all. So I'm certainly not optimistic about the fate of the world. And again, traveling and probably seeing, maybe I saw 1 million people, because Japan, you can just stand in the subway there and you can see 200,000 people in a day. And Thailand is very crowded, etc. Nepal, you see a lot of people. And I would say, with few exceptions, most people are quite asleep. They're the Walking Dead. So the awareness that we might be able to bring and share here is not the norm in this world. People are concerned with they have very petty concern, very shallow concerns. They ain't jumping into a 3-year retreat, and they ain't jumping on this phone call either. So most of the world is quite asleep to their spiritual potential, or even their psychological potential. They're trying to be happy, trying to make a living, trying to take care of their family, and often there's ruthless aspects to that too. You can get ripped off in a lot of different ways in a lot of places, including in North America. So we have to deal with a lot in our lives, as we know, and we have to be very cautious of the packs of wolves that are around, the regular folks that are overcharging you, or of course the corporations, the phone companies, whoever it is that is gouging us. 24% on your credit card when the interest rate was still when it was 1%, steal your chart, you're charged 17 or 24%. So it's a tough place that we're living in, but it is a proving ground for our own spiritual development. And so I applaud anyone who is treading this path and who is trying to help others, even though it may be a drop in the bucket. Again, I don't hold out for the state of this entire world, but I'm very happy to help a few individuals, and I know our karma will complete somewhere down the road. I'm very, very interested because of Tibetan Buddhism. I'm very interested and have studied a lot of material and practiced a lot of material around light body. And so I have, and because of my own work, studying with a psychic healer over a 13-year period and then practicing for 40 years with energy sensitivity, let's call it, or biosensitivity. I have a theory that if you have developed, because light body is not something that happens instantly. It's not, first I have a cellular body, now I have a light body. So there's a whole period of development during our life. And I do believe, my pet theory is, if you have achieved 30% luminosity, then there's a possibility that you will reincarnate and continue. Because I'm a follower of Gurdjieff's concept or dictum that if nothing has developed, if you're, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, the average person, if they do not develop a vehicle to carry on past this life, then they'll just be recycled. And J.G. Bennett called it the soul stuff pool. Like your soul will go back, what belongs to the sun will go to the sun, what belongs to the moon, to the earth, and your soul material will be recycled, etc. So to become a so-called stream winner in Buddhism, to achieve a state in which you can carry on your evolution, is already a great possibility. Because as we know, I don't know, I've been fortunate to meet some who I consider illuminated people, enlightened beings, but there's not a lot. I mean, this is an extremely rare situation. Even going to Nepal, meeting as many ordained people or monks or not, whatever their status might be, very few have reached high levels of realization. I can count on two hands. I've been very fortunate because of, spending my whole life doing this. I can count on actually two hands the number of what I consider fully realized beings. I don't know if they're a Buddha or a Jesus, but they're way up there. So my personal goal, if I can help others reach that threshold where they can carry on with their spiritual practice beyond this one life, because I don't see how you can do it in one life. If you did do it in this one life, it's because you had 50 or 100 other lives where you were very fortunate and working very, very hard. And in fact, when I first had met Kala Rinpoche, I had already been in practice, and I already had developed, I wasn't born that way that I know of, but I had developed my ability to feel energies, to have a psychic communion with individuals, know what's going on in their body and in their psyche and where their blocks were, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked him about that. And I said, I read somewhere that if you use this, if you use your siddhis or your spiritual gifts, they'll use them up and it's a bad thing. He says, no, if you're using that to help people, have at it. You can use that gift. So that's the way I've approached that. In any way that I can help people to develop and further my own development, then that's where I'm at. So that's my only prediction, or my only, you could say, advice to the broader world, is just continue to help others and to forge ahead on your own path, and to watch out for the fakes and phonies, because they're everywhere on all levels, not just on a spiritual level, but there's deception. And I think 2023 will continue with an accelerated level of deception, especially as people have noted, more truths will come out. And because of that, there'll be more resistance and more lies in order to cover up some of these dastardly events that have transpired and been perpetrated upon the human race. So that's it really for me.
Oh, thank you very much. That was
thanks for listening to the doom and gloom.
No, it was a lot of wisdom. Quick question. For those of us who did have to get vaccinated, what do we do medically?
Actually, there's
mitigate
quite a bit of
things.
information. It's freely available on the internet. And again, that's the staggering thing. That kind of information. I have some photos of me the very first week that we heard about this pandemic, and I got a trench coat on, rubber gloves, a mask, a hat, and that lasted, I think, about 4 days. And by then, some information started to come out, and I said, "Wait a minute, this is a bit flaky." And now, of course, it's an inconceivable avalanche of information about the toxicity and about the possible rectifications. There's whole books written, and there's resources of the 12 top misinformation spreaders like Dr. Mercola and so on. There's a lot of wonderful information, free information on how to combat the various levels of toxicity, and of course it varies from person to person. And COVID itself, being a biowarfare agent in the first place, has some very long-standing. I had it twice, and I still had it twice, and there are some long-term consequences I'm still working with. I still have to deal with that. It's a very toxic phenomenon. So yeah, that is readily available. And another thing I didn't mention was on my sheet there, and you did allude to it, the uptake, because the countries that I visited now, I've spent probably half my life in Asia, so I spent half the year traveling there in Buddhist countries mainly. But I would say the uptick in demonic energy is phenomenal. In fact, when this pandemic first happened, I put a little blog out and say, yeah, this is my perception was there was a black and a red, a fire iron dragon that was awakened in the East, arising particularly because of all the hatred that had been spewed over the last few years, woke up this dragon. And I remember when it landed in LA, I could feel this cloud settle here as well. So there's no question that for me, having been very involved with Tibetan Buddhism and practice of Cho, which deals directly with demonic forces or interdimensional entities, that there's a tremendous uptick in demonic activity. And people who are holders of the light can certainly expect to be under attack. That happens. If the better the work is that you're doing, the more you're liable to be targeted, you're liable to be noticed by these kinds of forces. So all the more reason to gird your loins and have a great spiritual strength and align yourself with powerful spiritual forces that can come to your aid. We can't do it ourselves, for sure. I have my little buddies here, and I really rely on my pantheon of Tibetan helpers and meditations to protect myself, because it's nasty out there. And each country has their own little nasty folks. So you go from country to country, you're getting it's like a different microbiology. You're getting different types of organisms, bacteria, viruses, molds. And you're also getting different non-human entities showing up, and they're just as much pathogens as microbes, or just another life form. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Asa. And if someone wants to work with you and study with you, what's the best way to make contact?
Yeah, they can go to one of my many websites, the5wisdoms.com or the 5waysofpower.com. I can put it in the chat.
Sure, that'd be great.
My main approach, based on Tibet, not only just Tibetan Buddhism, but cross-cultural investigation of this ancient piece of wisdom of these five elemental forces that maintain the world, our bodies, our minds, and our spirit. That's the focus of my training, because I find it's the most accessible and accurate and immediate way to start transforming our body and mind, is through the five elements. It's a basic building block you can work with.
Great. You said you're coming out with a new course on that?
Yeah, I've got courses and books coming out this year. Some of these books I've been writing literally for 20 years, my own karmic obstacles to get them out there. But this year it is happening. So yeah, they'll soon be around. Five elemental psychology and five elemental energy healing, etc. So I'll put a link to that stuff.
Excellent. Look forward to reading them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Blessings and Happy New Year.